Okay, everyone, it's 6 o'clock and we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Colleen Connolly. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's Northeast Regional Office in Wilkes-Barre. Tonight, we are here to answer questions and take testimony regarding Lackawanna Energy Center's air quality plan approval application to purchase emission reduction credits as part of their permitting requirements. The ERCs, or the Emission Reduction Credits, are for the company's 1,500 megawatt natural gas-fired plant, which is currently under construction in Jessup, Lackawanna County. The permit application for the plan approval was received by the department on September 14, 2017, and went out for public comment in December of 2017, and that comment period will end 10 days after this hearing, which would be February 14th, Wednesday, which is Valentine's Day. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Part of the process of reviewing a permit application is to get public comment, public input from citizens like you, and that's important to DEP to hear from the public. So we want to take this opportunity to thank you and appreciate you coming out. Before I continue, I want to introduce our panelists tonight who are going to answer questions and listen to your testimony. I'll start with DEP first. We have Mark Weichner, who is head of our air quality program in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Sean Wenrick, out of Harrisburg from our air quality program central office, and Ray Kempa, our permits section chief out of our Wilkes-Barre office. And if I could ask representatives from Lackawanna Energy Center and Invenergy to stand and introduce themselves.
Mike Blazer, Senior Vice President, Chief Legal Officer for Invenergy.
I'm Dan Ewan, Vice President of Thermal Development for Invenergy.
And Dan Holland, Environmental Consultant, All For Incorporated.
Okay, these gentlemen will be taking questions from you, providing answers, and again, listening to testimony, as will I. Tonight, the process is going to take part in two phases. First, we're going to have the public meeting, which is the question and answer session. You can come up, you can ask a question, and someone from our panel or from DEP will answer your question, and I'll decide who gets to answer the question, if it's more towards DEP or if the question is geared more toward Lackawanna Energy Center. That'll run from about 6:15 to 7:15. Beginning at 7:30, we'll begin the public meeting part of the evening, which is to take comments. It'll be recorded by a stenographer when a stenographer gets here, and that will be open for discussion, and we will publish a comment response document as soon as the public comment period ends. Before we begin tonight, I want to point out that Invenergy and DEP is going to do a 5-minute PowerPoint presentation to explain a little bit about how emission reduction credits work, how DEP regulates them, and what they are used for. So if Invenergy would like to stand up, if we could lower the screen, we'll begin our PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Just the projector. Okay, my name is Dan Holland. I've prepared this presentation on behalf of Lackawanna Energy Center. It is a brief discussion about how emission reduction credits have been applied for this particular project. Emission reduction credits are a requirement for areas that are in the ozone transport region. That's really the crux of this particular situation. Within the ozone transport region, Pennsylvania is one of the states that is within the region. Emissions of NOx, nitrogen oxides, or oxides of nitrogen, and volatile organic compounds are the two precursor pollutants for ozone that are regulated under the ozone transport rules and must be addressed as part of non-attainment new source review permitting. The area that is shown for the ozone transport region is here. It extends from Maryland to the south, Washington, D.C., and extends all the way up to Maine. This underscores the regional nature of ozone. Ozone is not a pollutant that is formed locally. It is you have local emission sources that then are transported great distances, a couple hundred kilometers, in many cases downwind, resulting in potentially elevated ozone concentrations at hundreds of kilometers downwind. One of the important things to note within this ozone transport region is that most of the areas are actually in attainment with the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. Here in northeastern Pennsylvania, we've been measuring attainment of the ozone standard since 2004. So much like most of the areas within the ozone transport region, we're really not having any problem with respect to the ozone levels. As I indicated, the requirement to obtain emission reduction credits is part of the Federal Clean Air Act. The 1990 Clean Air Act amendments instituted a program where you had to have a reduction of emissions of NOx and of VOC if you had a project that triggered new source review permitting in the ozone transport region. One of the things that's important to understand is that the emission reduction credits must be actual emission reductions. They're not reductions in permitted levels, they are actual emission reductions. There are a couple of ways that you can obtain or that you can generate emission reduction credits. You can generate them through the shutdown of an emission source, or you can generate emission reduction credits as part of a over-control scenario where you are installing pollution control equipment that will control emissions to a level lower than what you're required to under any type of applicable regulation or under any type of rule. Emission reduction credits that are generated have to be approved by the state agency. So within the ozone transport region, each state has the responsibility to approve any of those emission reductions and then to put those emission reduction credits in a place that can be tracked in a registry. Within the ozone transport region, facilities that have to obtain emission reduction credits, they have to offset every ton of NOx emissions that they are permitted to emit by a greater amount than what they're emitting. So for NOx, for every 1 ton of NOx emitted, they must obtain an emission reduction credit of 1.15 tons. For every 1 ton of VOC emitted, there must be an emission reduction credit of 1.15 tons of VOC. So from that standpoint, really what the intent is to allow for economic development in these areas that are within the ozone transport region while still ensuring that we have an overall goal of improving air quality. And that's really what we're talking about here. Now, within the ozone transport region, certain states have formed reciprocity agreements so that they can utilize emission reduction credits that might occur in a neighboring state. Pennsylvania has an agreement with New York as well as with Maryland. So emission reductions that occur in those two states can be applied for projects within Pennsylvania. And this really makes sense when you consider that ozone is a regional pollutant, such that a ton of NOx emissions that are controlled in New York will have an equivalent downwind impact to a ton of emissions that are emitted or controlled in Pennsylvania. So that regional scale is part of what's being incorporated here with respect to the reciprocity. It's also important to understand that where the actual emission reduction credits are generated has some effect on it. I cannot generate an emission reduction credit in a cleaner area and then attempt to use that in a dirtier area. That's one of the limitations that we have on the ability to apply emission reduction credits. As I said, emission reduction credits are something that have been used by all sources. It's a requirement for the non-attainment new source review rules, and it's really designed to improve air quality because of the fact that we are in the ozone transport region, and it is assumed a goal that we want to improve the air quality within that entire region. With respect to Lackawanna Energy Center, as part of the air permitting process, they needed to obtain emission reduction credits before they commenced operation of their facility. They needed to go out and secure those emission reduction credits either from the facilities that had actually decreased their emissions or over-controlled their emissions, or they could go to a third-party broker that would actually sell the emissions to them. So they had to go out, obtain those emissions, then they had to submit a plan approval permit application to the DEP that the DEP then had to review and certify that the emission reductions that had been claimed for this particular project were indeed valid to be used. PADEP has accomplished that. We've seen a draft permit for that, and this is really the final administrative step in the plan approval process. I'm going to turn that over to Mark or to Sean if there's anything you want to add to it. I know you guys have your own presentation. We can cue that up here.
Thank you. My name is Sean Wenrick. I am from the Permits Division of the Bureau of Air Quality in Harrisburg, and I would like to speak a little bit on an overview of the Emission Reduction Credit Program. There will be some overlap from the last presentation. For a background, major facilities in non-attainment areas are required to purchase or obtain somehow ERCs. Pennsylvania, as was stated, is located in the ozone transport region, and NOx and VOCs are precursors for ozone. NOx facilities in Pennsylvania that are major emitters of NOx must offset their emissions with NOx ERCs, and likewise for VOC. And you'll see there the citation in the Pennsylvania code that covers ERC generation and use. At central office, we maintain the registry for ERCs. The main things that we have are where they were generated, the amount, the current owners, and the expiration dates of those ERCs. And this registry is available to the public. It is on our website. It is updated approximately once a month. So our job in central office, we think of it as kind of like a bank. We track the deposits and withdrawals, so to speak, who is generating ERCs, who's purchasing ERCs, who's using ERCs. We also review ERC transfers from New York and Maryland. As was stated, we do have reciprocity agreements. However, the ERCs that are generated in New York and Maryland must meet Pennsylvania's requirements. And this is what the requirements for ERC generation look like. There are 4 main criteria that are listed in the regulation. The first one is that they must be permanent, meaning for a shutdown source, that source is permanently shut down. If a boiler goes offline, it cannot be brought back. It also means if there's an over-control was the reason for ERC generation, then the control devices must be utilized at all times. The ERCs must be enforceable. We have a program in Pennsylvania where if a company decides to generate ERCs via a shutdown, we will send out a DEP inspector to verify that not only has the switch been turned off, but that either the emitting source has been removed or somehow rendered inoperable. The ERCs must be quantifiable. The amount of ERCs that are generated are based on an average of 2 years' worth of actual emissions. And these emissions must be calculated either through continuous emission monitors, through stack testing, through some method that's been approved by DEP. So we can't have just a guess as to what the emissions are. The amount of emissions must be known. They also must be surplus. An example of this would be we just came out with some new regulations for ozone pollutants. There are some power plants that needed to reduce their emissions in order to meet the new requirements. Those power plants would not be allowed to generate ERCs from that mandated reduction. So we'll talk about some of the roles within DEP. The regional offices will approve generation of ERCs, whether it be through a shutdown or over control of pollutants. That's where the inspection comes in, and they will also verify that the amount is correct. The central office will approve the transfer from one owner to another to make sure we know who the proper owner of those ERCs are at any time. The regional offices will then approve the use of ERCs as emission offsets through the issuance of a plan approval, which is what we're discussing tonight. And then we work together on issues such as determination of expiration dates and reductions due to subsequent regulations. ERCs do expire if they are generated by a shutdown. They have a life of 10 years. If those ERCs are not used in a plan approval within that 10-year span, then they are no longer valid. Subsequent regulations may also reduce the amount of ERCs available if a facility shuts down and a regulation comes out, say a few years later, that they would have been subject to that would have lowered their emissions. We deduct that amount from what they have in the ERC registry. So in order for the company to use ERCs as emission offsets, they need two approvals. They need one approval from DEP Central Office approving the transfer of ownership from one entity to another, and they also need a plan approval from each regional office approving the use of the ERCs. And since August 2007, we have been coordinating the timing of these reviews to make sure that we're all on the same page. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Shut that off. You could lift up the screen. Okay, before we continue, I just want to go over a couple of ground rules, how we will allow this meeting to progress. We're here to take questions and testimony tonight regarding the emission reduction credits as applied for in the plan approval by Invenergy. We won't be discussing any other topics tonight. We will stick strictly to the emission reduction credits. A couple ground rules, if you could, please turn your cell phones off or put them on vibrate. No signs in the auditorium. We don't have any, so that's okay. This hearing, as I said, is for questions and testimony only, regarding emission reduction credits. How this will operate is I'll call your name on a sheet of paper. If you want to come up, ask a question. We're going to try and limit it to 3 questions so we can let the next person come up and ask a question. If we have time to go back to the same person twice, certainly we'll do that. Same thing for the hearing portion. I'll call your name. You can come up and offer testimony, and we'll allow 5 minutes for testimony. Please don't, when your name is called, just please come up to the microphone, say and spell your name and what town you're from. Just a couple of rules. Don't approach the microphone unless your name is called, or don't approach the microphone out of turn. Please don't interrupt others who are speaking by booing, yelling, clapping, making comments. Please be respectful and let that person have their questions or testimony heard. You cannot donate your time or your questions to anyone else, so please use your time wisely. We have to be out of here tonight by 9:30, 10 o'clock, so we'd like to keep this moving along as efficiently as possible. Once you finish asking your questions and your testimony, you can take your seat so we can allow the next person to come up and do the same. I'm the host and the facilitator tonight, so the host facilitator reserves the right to deny anyone the opportunity to ask a question if it's off topic, or testimony if it's off topic, if that person doesn't follow the rules set forth. Now, or if you're considered to be a threat here, I would ask you to leave. We'll have you escorted from the facility and ask not to return. Of course, tonight, I don't feel like it's going to get out of hand like that, so we should be able to have a meeting that progresses rather smoothly. Okay, we're going to get started with the question and answer session. If you come up and approach the microphone. 3 questions, if you can. I'll have you sit down, go to the next person, and again, if we have time, we'll come back up again. Okay, John Mello?
Great. John Mello, LLOW. And I already submitted detailed comments to you during the public comment period in writing, but I just want to focus on one particular ERC, and that's the graphics package.
Excuse me, the microphone's on.
Is the
It's not?
Just move closer to it.
Okay,
Closer,
how's
yeah,
that?
Closer. How about a little bit closer?
More
John?
closer? Hold on.
Yeah, we won't bite.
Okay, how's that?
All right. Great.
Okay. I want to focus my question on one particular ERC, and that's graphics packaging. Graphics packaging is a facility that's located over 100 miles northeast. In other words, not even close to the appointment of Pennsylvania. And it was closed over 18 years ago. I believe, with the information we have here, is it was ERC was certified on March 25th, 1996. And again, this has been closed for quite a few decades. Why is this considered a valid ERC? There's other questions I have on the other ERCs, but I just want to focus on this particular one for the question.
The New York DEC approved this ERC as an over-control. And since they made that determination, that's what we stuck with as well.
But hasn't it closed for about 18 years? It hasn't been putting no emissions into the atmosphere for 18 years. And I understand the point of the ERC program, and it's a good point to reduce overall emissions in this part of the United States. But it seems like if you're taking a ERC that's 100 and some miles northeast of this site, and has been closed for almost, let's say, 20 years, and giving no emissions at all per year, it doesn't seem to be a valid, or at least a concern. It has been doing nothing for 20 years. Now all of a sudden, this is a valid ERC for Lackawanna Energy.
Well, it's always been a valid ERC. And there's no provision in the regulation to reclassify an ERC from an over-control to a shutdown.
What about the 10 years?
3 questions.
Or shutdown. This was an over-control.
One more question, John.
That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have Relis Scasalati, and I think I mispronounced your name. Scasalati. Relis. Did you say your name again?
You were very close. Relis Gasolati, and I'm from Jessup. Thank you. One of the ERCs they're considering purchasing is from Lackawanna Energy Supply Company. And as of the January 19th registry, they still haven't been purchased. Won't this have to be resolved, purchased, and approved before this permit is approved?
Yes, this was, if you remember in my presentation, where we said since August of 2007, we're trying to streamline the timing of these approvals. So we have the approval of that purchase ready to go, and that will be closer to the time that a decision is made on this plan approval.
There will be an increase of emissions during blowdown, cleanup, and startup procedures. Has this been taken into consideration in the modules by DEP and air permit and ERC purchases? It comes in a part-time question. How long will these incidents last? And are there noticeable spells? Because there's been issues in other states. And presently there is some type, forget that.
Yeah, all the emissions have been accounted for in the plan approval that was issued for the construction, including blowdowns, miscellaneous emissions, sources, all of that. And there is malloy regulations in the plan approval that we can't have detected bulk malloy outside the property line. So once it's operational, then that'll be something that we look at during our inspections.
Okay. What modification changes were made to the plant and equipment that enabled the original wastewater discharge of 290,000 gallons per day to be reduced to 58,000? LEC has not issued a change in intake amount of water, but remains at 400,000 gallons per day. How was this decrease accomplished, and has the EP representatives visited the plant to confirm no changes in equipment or plans has been made?
I'm sorry, that's off topic. As to the DES permit that was already approved, this is about emission reduction credits. I'm sorry, that's off topic. Do you have another question? Yes. Okay. If we could speak to emission reduction credits. Thank you.
Since LEC will self-monitor, exactly where will the monitoring devices be placed? How frequently are the reports sent to DEP, and will they be available to borough?
Well, they are emission reduction, continuous emission monitors at the facility. We get the reports quarterly. They're monitoring it continuously with the reports coming on a quarterly basis. I'm not sure about, any of these public information, can be available to the public. So all of that's available for review by the public.
We can find out exactly where these devices are placed.
That's something technical that I'm not aware of. That we have a special program in Harrisburg that approves the continuous emission monitors, and they have to be certified.
Well, that I understand, but we'd like to know where they are on the plant, where they're located.
Yeah, it'll be in stacks where the emissions are being emitted to the atmosphere.
I'm going to call someone else up, bro. We'll bring you back. Jerry Cornello, please.
Hi, I want to first thank you guys for obliging us by putting this session on.
Just stay close to the mic.
It was important to us.
Thank you.
The first question I have, I'm really going to aim this more at Invenergy as opposed to DEP, if that's okay. And my question has to do with, you had a lot of advertisements when you were looking to site this plant to offset all of the opposition for it. And most of your advertisements, which were full-page ads in the paper, social media, and things of that nature, you said you were making the local air better through this plant. And understanding the concept of ERCs, which is really not local air, it's regional and national, quite honestly. How are you exactly making the air in Jessup better? You talked about closing down coal plants and other pollution emitters, and I've seen that you're purchasing ERCs from places like New York State, Pittsburgh, and areas like that.
With all due respect, that subject was covered at length during the original. Sure. With all due respect, that subject was covered in detail during the original air plant approval process. As Ms. Connolly indicated, this process relates specifically, this process relates specifically to the ERCs, which is a regional issue that was also covered, I should add, in the original air plant process. I'm reading from the comment response summary, and I'll just read one line. Lackawanna Energy may obtain NOx and VOC ERCs from anywhere in Pennsylvania, as well as states within the OTR that have reciprocity agreements with the Commonwealth in accordance with 25 PA Code Section 127.2085. And that was the December 23 comment response document. Thank you.
Can I rephrase my question? How is the purchase of these ERCs making the air in Pennsylvania and Jessup better?
Again, that subject was covered at the original air plant approval process.
Are you saying you don't want to answer my question?
It is not properly the subject of this process.
Okay.
Okay,
You
so
move on, sir. Move on.
we refuse to answer the question, point taken. So my other question is, there are several communities in and around Jessup that are designated as energy justice areas. Are we considering the cumulative effect of this plant and other plants on these communities?
You talk about environmental justice?
Yes.
That's not really ERC related. All I can say is we have monitoring stations throughout the state that shows that we're in compliance or not compliance with the National Highway and Air Quality Standards. We have one up by Maryland University. So that takes in emissions from all sources, mobile sources, facilities like power plants, all of that. So that's something that's monitored continuously to show compliance with the NAAQS standards and the federal standards.
But my question is more about the ERC, and isn't it an impact on these environmental justice areas? Like, this pollution, and we're able to purchase these ERCs to offset it and bring the pollution in. But isn't that contrary to the purpose of the environmental justice area concept?
Sir, I'm going to ask you if you could, because we have to consult with our environmental justice office on this. I mean, it's a separate issue, but I will take your question back to Harrisburg and provide you with an answer. You can give me your contact information. I do understand there is one area in Lackawanna County that is considered environmental justice. The environmental justice issue was covered in the original air quality plan approval. They addressed those issues. But since you're asking as related to the emission reduction credits, I will take that back to our offices and I will speak it or talk it over with our environmental justice office and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Piconi?
Joseph Piconi, Jessup, Pennsylvania. I'd like to ask Invenergy, how much did they pay for the ERCs?
If there's a price that you can talk about, go ahead.
I don't think that's properly the subject of this proceeding.
Why not? Why won't you answer my question?
Because it's not properly the subject of this proceeding.
Pardon me, I didn't hear you.
I said it's not properly the subject of this proceeding.
Why?
This proceeding deals with
ERCs.
the approval of the
How much did you
ERCs
pay?
and the approval of the ERCs.
Okay, if I could just jump in here, they're not required to tell the department how much they pay. It's not a requirement
It's not
to announce how
required.
much you pay. It's
Do you
not
personally
required.
believe it should be?
I'm sorry?
Do you believe it should be?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Okay, never mind. My second question is the price cheaper for the ERCs from that plant that was closed 20 years ago than others? Is that having cheaping out others here?
That is also not properly
Okay,
the subject.
You refuse to answer that question. Thanks very much.
The prices, they don't have to.
I understand.
How much they pay. Okay, thank you. Ron Sebastian?
Ron Sebastian, Jessup, S-E-B-A-S-T-I-A-N-E-L-L-I. I would like to know, on the ERC, can the buyer also be the seller? Can he have a company under another name? The company that's going to buy the ERCs, can he be buying them from a company, maybe his brother-in-law owns or somebody in Invenergy's office owns?
Well, we,
Transparency is what I'm getting at.
well, yes, and we do reveal the names of the buyers and sellers. We do not look into the relationships if there is any.
So, Invenergy could be buying them that you won't even know about from a company that they own. Under
Yes,
another
all
name.
ERCs must be registered, yes.
All right. January 26, 2018, the EPA ends the clean air policy. Don't you think that this would weaken the limits on the toxic heavy metals emitted from the power plant smokestacks?
I'm sorry, sir, can you, one more time, repeat that
The
question?
EPA ends the clean air policy. The Clean Air Act defines a major source as one that has the potential to emit 10 tons or more per year of any hazardous air pollution. Now, the president and his subordinate says that this agenda is to keep America's air clean. I think it's going to weaken it. What do you think?
Okay, sir, the questions have to stick to emission reduction credits. They don't deal with half the nitrous
Right.
oxide
Oh, this is-
and VOCs.
Okay.
Okay, we're two different.
The emission reduction credits, does that go in the air when it comes out of the smokestack, or where does that go? I'm talking about air.
Emissions.
Yes. Well, will it weaken the limits on toxic heavy metals? he's doing away actually with most of the clean air policy. I mean, if you look at the paper, you'll be able to read about it. All right. Your original.
No more questions.
Okay. Your original permit, Air Pollution Control Act. It was in the classified paper, August 2nd, 2015, which afterwards was approved by DEP to allow 273.9 tons of carbon monoxide, 304.6 tons of nitrogen oxide, 76 tons of volatile organic compounds per year. These are all per year. 22.8 tons of total hazardous air pollutants, 73.1 tons of total PM, 147.5 tons of PM10, 147.5 tons of PM2.5.
Okay, so is there a question here?
Yes, I've got a good question. 39.9 tons of sulfur oxides, 31.2 tons of sulfuric acid, 4,988,598 tons of greenhouse gases, and 3,100 tons per year of lead. Don't you think that this is enough? Why do they need to have emission reduction credits? You gave them enough pollutants to put in the air. Why do you have to have these emission reduction credits? Where did they get the numbers that they put in this paper for you to review? Did they get it from another plant? How did they do it? How did they figure it? The air pollution, the emission. Is that it?
The emission reduction credits are not additional emissions that they're going to get from this facility. These are credits that have been purchased to offset the emissions that they're going to have at the facility. So the net emission in the region, the ozone transit region, is a downward trend of emissions over time. So that's the concept in the Clean Air Act, to get cleaner over time and still allow economic development.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Ron Armazzani?
Is this mic working?
Yes, it should.
The topic is emissions and emissions reductions. I want to know, does this plan file environmental impact statement? If so, all that information should be in there. And could I have a copy of that statement?
Okay, your question is, did they file an environmental impact statement?
Yes.
That's not something that the air quality program deals with.
I'm sorry.
That's not something that the air quality program deals with.
There's no requirement.
That's not what we're dealing with?
There's no requirement for that in our review of the air quality construction permit.
There's no reason to have an environmental impact statement.
There is no requirement in the permit application that it filed.
Why do these other places have to have an environmental impact statement that are up on that hill?
There was a modeling required for the construction of this to show that they're not going to cause an exceedance of the national ambient air quality standard.
It's working.
I can't hear what you're saying.
I was saying
Please use the mic.
there was modeling required. They had to do air quality modeling on their emissions to show that they're not going to exceed one of our national ambient air quality standards. They're national standards that EPA sets based on health concerns. So they had to do modeling to show that they're not going to exceed any of that, and they passed that test.
What can I get a copy of this statement?
That's not an environmental impact statement,
That's
it's a
what?
modeling.
Certainly, there must be an impact
We have a
statement.
summary sheet that we can make available to you.
What?
We have a summary sheet we can make available to you on the modeling, and I can get your information, we can send it to you.
You can send it to my address?
Sure.
You want my
Give us
address?
our contact. At the end of the meeting, I'll get your contact information, I promise. Do you have another question, sir?
Yes, your answers are very evasive. They're not to the point where you don't answer. You don't answer the questions. You evade them.
Do you have
And
a
I
question
want to know
about the
why.
ERCs?
And I want to know why.
Do you have a question about the ERCs, sir?
Yes, why? Why? First question. I know you're not going to answer this one either. So forget it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Carolyn Zinn? You could just move a little bit. Thank you.
Carolyn Mazanti. I'm from Island, Pennsylvania. I have a question regarding the emission reduction credits. By purchasing the emission reduction credits, are you degrading our air quality or are you improving our air quality?
As I mentioned earlier, the Clean Air Act came up with this ERC regulation back in 1990. The concept is if some facilities going to emit, say a facility going to emit 100 tons of NOx, they have to offset emissions by a 1 to 1.15 ratio. So they basically have to eliminate 115 tons somewhere else. So over time, you're decreasing emissions in that regional area, but still allowing economic growth.
So when you're talking about the regional area, I understand that, but when they're actually emitting from that particular point of pollution source, the local air quality will actually be degraded. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, because those are long-range transport pollutant. Whatever is emitted in Lackawanna County is going to affect some ozone downwind. The ozone we're dealing with here is probably coming from the Pittsburgh area, Ohio, the state of Ohio. It's transported.
Okay, so the nitrogen oxide and the volatile organic compounds that are coming from the emission source, you're saying that 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles will not be negatively impacted, will be degraded?
It's forming.
I mean, let me just say, today the plant's not operating. When this plant comes online, 5 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, will our local air quality be degraded compared to, let's just say, right now?
No, it shouldn't, and that's what we did, air quality modeling in the regional application, and that shows very complex. I'm not a modeler, we have a guy from Harrisburg that does it, very complex. It takes days to run these models. It shows that we don't even come close to having an exceedance of our ozone standard. And if you look at our long-term trend from 1970 on, where we continuously monitored, the ozone levels in Lackawanna County have dropped dramatically.
In terms of the volatile organic compounds, if there's 76 tons coming out per year, how could that not degrade our particular local area? I guess I don't understand. If you have all this stuff coming out, how does that not degrade 5 miles? And actually, another question too, what is the greatest impact from that particular plant that will absorb all of these emissions? Because it has to have some kind of change. Is that our air quality has to have some kind of change? Am I correct?
It's all mixed together, and that's why we have this large ozone transfer region that goes from Maryland all the way up to Maine. So it's an enormous area. It's all the emissions are mixed, transported in different directions, and the formation of ozone is very complex. So you need sunshine, you need warm, hot temperatures, you need NOx and VOCs, mixing in the atmosphere. So it's a very complex process. Our modelers have got data of maybe, where's the bigger impact? I don't have that information here on the modeling that was done.
I'm listening to you.
One more question.
All right. And what is the greatest impact from the actual plant that will absorb and be affected the most in terms of what they're putting out into the atmosphere? How many, is it 2 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles? What is the actual range that will be? Because I know that when you were doing these modelings, I was looking at your website, and they were talking about areas, national wildlife refugee conservation places, And they were saying that it won't affect them. So if it's not affecting them, how could it not be affecting us?
Well, that's part of the process when we model. They have to look at, certain classification areas that are very sensitive, these high classification wilderness areas. I'm not the modeler, so I don't have that information.
So you're saying that you don't have the information, but they wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to impact, let's say 500, 100 miles, whatever distance. They wanted to make sure it wasn't going to impact that far away, but we're not too concerned about 5 miles from the plant, 2 miles from the plant. And I'm just logically, it just does not make sense if they're so concerned about 50 miles, 100 miles for a wildlife, conservation place.
Their question is about the regional area. I think he's answered that.
Right, but
Okay, thank you. Jason Petrosca?
So I want to understand this a little bit better. So they're purchasing a certain amount of ERCs to offset an amount of pollution that they're exceeding for certain types. I guess my question is there like a monitoring that happens after the plant is operating to ensure that they're not exceeding the amount that they said they would be at that require them to purchase credits?
Yes, we have continuous emission monitors that are required in the facility to continually measure their emissions.
So my question is, if they were to exceed the certain amount of these things that they say they're going to be at now, do they have to in the future buy more credits to account for that exceedance? Or is there a penalty for them if they exceed that, like a fine? Or
There's a penalty, fines, things like that.
And where does that money go if they have to pay a fine?
We have the Clean Air Fund. There's a Clean Air Fund. I'm not sure exactly where it goes into the program.
And then another question is there a limit to how many facilities like Invenergy can be placed in one geographical area and be allowed to continue buying ERC? So the example I'm saying, we're in sort of a situation where right now there's another power plant proposed for Archibald. Of course, everyone can see the transmission lines and knows about the infrastructure upgrades that are happening all the time. There's just a plant, a natural gas conversion plant proposed for Troop today that came out in the news. So we're in an area where a lot of power plants can come. My question is there a limit to how many of those can come here, this one geographical region, and continue to buy credits for this type of stuff? Like, is there a point at which we say, there's no more because there's just too much concentration of that in one area?
It depends on if there's another Invenergy being built, they have to do modeling and incorporate all the emissions, including new facilities. So all those emissions are incorporated into the modeling. So if they're showing compliance with the NACs, then they'll be fine. If they're starting to show that there could be an exceedance of our NACs, then we could have some issues with it.
So cumulative facts would be taken. And then this is one last question, but they are taking into account as more plants come online.
Whenever we modeling, we look at all emissions, new and existing, in a certain radius of where the source is being put.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Jessup?
Was shut down 13 or 18 years ago. Is there, after the 5-year plan, has to be major source reviewed, is there a way to retire those ERCs from a plant that did not exist 20 years ago?
As we stated before, when an ERC is classified initially from a shutdown, there is a 10-year expiration date. However, in the case you're talking about, it was initially classified as an over-control and therefore did not have an expiration date.
Can that be retired at the 5-year major source reevaluation of the permit?
No, once ERCs are used in a permit, they cannot be reused.
In the 2015 New Clean Air Policy, there is a segment of that, and I didn't hear you touch on wind generation and ERCs available for that, where a wind power ERC, if it's generated in Maine, could be used for a coal plant in Wyoming, as it reads, as long as it's hooked up to a grid. Is that, can that be applied in Jessup?
It sounds to me you may be speaking about greenhouse gases.
I'm speaking about ERCs, come from a legitimate generator measured as long as they're connected to a continuous bulk power grid. An ERC by a wind turbine in northern Maine could be sold to a coal unit in Wyoming to reduce the performance rate. It was part of Obama's clean energy plan. I'm wondering if those ERCs could be generated to lower the emission of this particular plant in Jessup.
In this particular case, we're talking about ozone precursors, which are generated from combustion sources and the like. So a wind generation plant is zero emission and therefore would not generate reduction credits.
Under the plan, they get credit for not emitting. So you're not familiar with Obama's 2015?
The emissions that you're talking about
Clean power.
are greenhouse gases,
Right.
not with respect to the ozone precursors.
Directly out of the new clean energy plan.
Right, but emission reduction credits can mean multiple things. You can have emission reduction credits for multiple different types of pollutants. We're dealing with ozone in this particular instance. Clean Power Plan looked at finding ways to reduce greenhouse gases across the entire grid nationwide and allowed states to work with one another to use renewable energy sources to replace coal-fired units. That's what the plan was that Obama pulled together. That's what you were talking about there.
Yes,
Okay, thank you, sir. Alex Latorre, you can come back up. Alex Latorre, I'll call you back.
That was my two questions.
I'll call you back. I'm just running close to starting the public hearing. I want to get a question.
But it's all good.
I have a question. In the common response document provided for the air quality plan approval, it addressed ERCs it cited PA code 127.210 section A, and in your response to, it was a comment that I had made about ERCs at that time. It stated that in that document that ERCs would need to be purchased prior to commencement of operating sources. And I'm curious what you classify as a source on the site, and did construction emissions, are they included in the as a source? And also I've noticed in a photograph recently that there was a plume of, looks like exhausts from some kind of equipment there. I don't know if it was coming from the plant or not, but we had some pictures recently. Are there any sources currently operating would be the other question to go with that.
For mobile sources, construction activity doesn't count for construction. Yeah, no, they haven't started their turbines or anything like that yet.
Okay, and just, you said construction emissions are not counted as a source in that?
Like the dozers and all that, like the mobiles and that.
Okay, and I have a follow-up question. I guess it would be for Invenergy. When you proposed the plant initially, you had a lower megawatt. Was that megawatt, I believe it was 1,300, in the 1,300 to 1,400 range? Were those emissions below the national ambient air quality standards that would have required a purchasing of an ERC? I remember you had turbine back in 2014, you were in 1,300 range and 1,500 range. Did increasing the size of the plant bring the ERCs into
Well, first of all, your question isn't relevant to the subject of this proceeding, but the answer to your question is no.
So the original, there was an air quality, there was an original plan, air quality plan approval that was modified with an amendment to increase the megawattage from 2014 into 2015. And I'm just curious, are you aware whether or not that proposal was under the ERC limit?
It was, when the first time the application came in, it was a major non-attainment source, so they would have been purchasing the ERCs either way.
Okay. And my final question.
Last question.
In Elizabeth Township in Fall River, Rhode Island, are your plans proposed, do they require purchasing of ERCs?
We're talking about the Invenergy plan, okay?
I'm asking Invenergy about, like, regarding this plant, do they typically choose to build plants that require ERCs, or is this a unique circumstance?
ERCs are federally required as part of the permit.
But for their power plants that they typically build combined cycle natural gas, is this something that is typical for them to go this big, where they have to purchase 350.3 tons of NOx and 87.4 tons a year of VOCs? Is that the typical range that you're buying ERCs at? Can you give me like a value judgment? Are you?
Is that directed to us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this better or worse than your plants in Elizabeth County, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island?
This proceeding relates to the Lackawanna Energy Center, not any proposed plants in any other location, and it's not the proper subject of this proceeding.
That's like, is it higher or lower than those plants? I mean, relative, did you propose a bigger plant here because you thought coal field residents would accept it? Is that, it's regarding the ERCs? You just go over the limit because you're in Northeast Pennsylvania?
Okay, I'm going to cut you off. I think this is okay. I'm going to go back over. We only have a couple of minutes before we get ready for the, anyone who hasn't asked a question that wants to come up, who has not asked?
Yes.
The first person in the back there, you want to come up? Whoever has not asked a question yet, if you can come up to the microphone. And please, I'm going to limit it to one. We're getting close to the hearing time. Just say your name, sir.
Ernest Limoncelli. You've been mentioning regional air quality. Could you tell me how big the region is that was modeled? And is there any statistics on the accuracy of the model?
We don't have a model there to answer that question.
Is that a question you can ask him and then write the answer back?
Yes, I can get you that
So we can get the
No, I'll make sure this thing
because, you know, we've all seen modeling in hurricanes, and some of them have it go on Maine, some of them have it go on Louisiana. So I'd just like to know how accurate the modeling is that we're accepting here as gospel. Thank you.
Thank you. You can offer testimony if you come down. Sir, right there, come on up. And sir, we're on with you.
Hi, James Moran. My question is to DEP. Is this the longest time you've ever seen the credits used for, over 10 years? That's my number one question. Go ahead.
Okay.
We have seen credits from over control of this duration before, yes, there is precedent for this.
Okay, according to the DEP website, fines go directly to the Clean Air Fund, which pay for air quality programs. Could that be true? You were struggling to answer that question before.
Well, it's not related to the emission reduction credits, sir, so.
So how does this new power plant, the Meadowbrook power plant that they're proposing, how's that going to affect the model?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, sir?
How does the Meadowbrook power plant, which is going in true, affect this model?
I'm gonna, that's not related to the topic at hand.
But
We're talking about
it
emission
does
reduction credits,
affect the credits.
It's not related to this topic.
And then my last question is, how long did you guys have these energy credits for? Do you have others? Do you have any more that you could use that are local versus using ones from further away? That's my only question.
How long have they had these ones?
That they're using, and do they have other ones in their back pockets that they could take out?
They don't own them, they just purchase them.
The subject of this hearing is approval of the ones that we've proposed.
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
Sure. The subject of this hearing is approval of the ones that we've proposed. We have purchased what we're required to purchase under our plan.
Okay, come on, sir, right here, if you come up here, come on up.
Yes, my name is Pete Larry, I'm from Jessup, and I'm a little confused by all these questions that are being asked. You have 7 people up there, and the whole gist of this meeting is a question and answer.
About the emission reduction credits.
Yes, Mr. Cornell asked a question earlier, and we didn't get an answer. I'm on council in Jessup, and I'd like to tell the citizens of Jessup about their air quality. Now, I asked Mr. Blazer about whether, or Invenergy, whether ERCs will make, or they made a statement that they were going to make Jessup air cleaner. Now, why can't you answer the question? It's related to ERCs. It's the reason why we're all here. We're all concerned about the quality of air in Jessup. And why can't he answer? I'm sure he traveled a long way. Did he come here just to take the Fifth Amendment on every question? Can he answer? Can anybody answer that question? That's why everybody's here.
The department will.
The way the ERC program is set up, as Mark stated before, is it decreases overall emissions over time. And it does this through two mechanisms. One is the offset ratio, meaning that if a company is proposing to emit 100 tons, they have to purchase ERCs worth 115. The other benefit is when ERCs are being used there for potential emissions or limited emissions, whereas when they're generated from actual emissions. So through those two mechanisms, overall emissions drop over time.
So Jessup's there is going to be cleaner. No, the question
that's
was,
not really
the question was asked.
Okay, let him answer. Let him answer. Sir.
Oh,
let him answer.
Well, yeah, the local air quality was done through the initial plan approval that authorized the construction of the plant. The ERC plan approval only finalizes the purchase and use of the ERCs.
Okay, could I ask Invenergy again? You made a statement. I'm sorry, I don't remember, Mr. Blazer, what was said about whether the air quality in Jessup will be better or not. Could you, I'm sure it's a short answer. Could you say yes or no?
I'm going to answer to Energy if you will now for a comment there.
As made clear during the original plan approval process, this facility will comply with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Sorry. As was covered in detail during the original plan approval process, this facility will comply with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. This issue was addressed at length. It was confirmed. That's why we received our construction permit. Anything beyond that at this point, again, this hearing dealing with solely the issue of approval of the emission reduction credits that we're proposing to purchase. Anything beyond that at this point is not relevant to this proceeding.
Well, I'm not.
Okay, sir, I think he's
I
answered. Other people up here. Okay, he's answered your question.
Still didn't answer the question about the air quality.
Okay, I'm going to have to, one more question, I have to cut it off, we have to begin the public hearing. Go ahead.
Yes, Tom Fiorelli, Jessup. I just had a question or a couple of questions on how particulate matter relates to the energy reduction credits. You guys had mentioned about, the gases, affecting areas further away, but as Dr. Holland mentioned at one of the meetings we were at, particulate matter is heavier than gas and it falls in the local area. Just, has that been addressed? And the emission reduction credit that's coming from north of us, which is certainly not upwind, how does that relate to the particulate matter?
Let's answer your first part of your question.
Well, emission reduction credits only become effective in non-attainment areas. Lackawanna County actually shows it's actually in attainment, but because it's in the ozone transport region, it's classified as non-attainment. So it's a tough deal that we're in the ozone transport region because Lackawanna County is very clean for ozone. Particulate is in attainment for Lackawanna County. Particulate PM 2.5 is all in attainment, so emission reduction credits don't count towards that.
Okay, so then it's fair to say that there's going to be particulate matter that does not currently exist. Once the plant starts, as Dr. Holland indicated, it's heavier than gases. It will fall upon our homes within, what's that figure, Doctor? 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers? You had mentioned that at the one meeting? Okay, thank you. Well, I think it's more like 2 kilometers, which I can't say again.
Okay, sir, we're in a public hearing, you can testify in a public hearing so it goes on record. Do you have one final question?
How does that make our air cleaner if we're inundated with particulates we don't have now?
I believe we answered the question about
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That concludes the public meeting. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll get ready for the public hearing where you can offer testimony. We'll begin that at 7:15. Thank you. Colleen Conley. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for DEP's Northeast Regional Office out of Wilkes-Barre. Tonight we're here to take testimony regarding Lackawanna Energy Center's air quality plan approval application to purchase emission reduction credits as part of their permitting requirements for their facility. The emission reduction credits, or the ERCs, are for the company's 1,500 megawatt natural gas-fired power plant currently under construction in Jessup, Lackawanna County. The permit application for the emission reduction credits was received by the department on September 14, 2017. It was put out for public notice in December of 2017 and is now under public comment. That comment date will close 10 days after this hearing, which falls on Wednesday, February 14, 2018. We will accept public comments on the plan approval application at our Northeast Regional Office on that date up until 4 p.m. Again, we introduced everyone at the public meeting portion of our evening. Now we're going to go into testimony, and I will follow the same procedure that we followed in the public meeting. I'll call your name, you can come up, offer testimony. Please say your name and speak directly into the microphone. We do have a stenographer who is recording this hearing. Once you have finished, if you could return to your seat, and we'll call the next person. The one ground rule I want to reiterate is you'll have 5 minutes to offer testimony. Please keep your testimony centered on the emission reduction credits for Lackawanna Energy Center. After we finish hearing public comments, we'll prepare comment response documents in response to the comments that we get tonight. And that typically comes out several weeks after this hearing and after the public comment period closes. Again, please, when I call your name, come up to the microphone, speak loud and clear so the stenographer can hear you. Okay, we're going to get started. We'll have John Mello. Mr. Mello, there he is.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask this question.
Fine. You'll have 5 minutes to testimony. No questions, it's just testimony.
Well, I know.
Just
I was going to ask
testimony.
Okay, John Mello, MBLOW, 1190 West Stage, Deep Archibald. I was going to ask this as a question, but I'd have submitted actually detailed comments by about 5 pages. The one thing I wanted to add to this was there has been emissions coming from the plant. Now, I don't know what they are. That's what I wanted to ask about. And also newspaper articles that state that the plant is going to start up one of its generators in February. Now, it seems like you won't be able to respond to all the public comments or obviously get a permit out of that, it seems, by February. Are they going to be allowed to have any kind of startup prior to the final approval?
This is public comment period, so you're going to have to be part of the public comment period and respond to your question.
Consider it rhetorical then. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next person on the list is Rella Scasolati again.
I'm still Rella Scasolati, and I'm still from Jessup. I'm very concerned about that the public and local government have been misled on the acquisition of these ERCs and other issues. Invenergy saturated the public with advertisements, mail-outs, and handouts between April and September of 2015. One of them just showing to see, the reason I want to state this, it is an ERCs, but it still has basis for what I'm going to say later. One of their claims minimized visual impact locally. The plant across the highway behind mature trees and with the natural features of the land right to the screens it from view. When you're leaving, walk outside and see if you can't see it. In these items, the clean air theme was mentioned over 20 times, which such statements as stand up for a stronger, cleaner Jessup, cleaner air right here, building the plant will result in healthier, cleaner air in Jessup. Breathe easy. Today, the air quality in Jessup is safe and healthy to breathe and will continue to be with the LEC natural gas power plant. Jessup can breathe easy knowing this won't change when the plant is built. With the same items, there were 12 claims of replacing coal plants. Clean power plant in Jessup will replace polluting coal power. Now, one ERC will replace a coal plant. The Hunlock Creek Energy Center switched to natural gas from the Marcellus shelves to generate electricity prior to December 2015. The Greenwich Power Plant burned coal until its 2011 closing. The plant has since been converted to a fully gas-powered plant. Excuse me. The pending acquisition, Armstrong Power Station, was a coal-fired plant that was closed on September 1st, 2012. These three sources were closed well before Invenergy commenced purchase processes. DEP should hold them accountable for such misstatements. If they have inundated the public with such misinformation, DEP should question claims made on their application without factual backup. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jerry Crenella.
Hello again. Just two comments. I spoke earlier about the advertisements that Invenergy.
I'm sorry, say your name and your hometown, this is on.
Crenella, C-R-I-N-E-L-L-A.
It's Jerry.
Jerry, thank you.
Thank you.
So I spoke earlier about Invenergy posting their many advertisements in the paper and their mailers saying that the air in Jessup will be cleaner as a result of this plant. Rella just mentioned and reminded us that they also noted that there will be no visual impact because it was going to be screened behind trees, and we all know that's not true. Now, they're also making these same statements about the ERCs and what they're going to be emitting, and all of these comments about where they're buying them from and how it's actually going to make the region cleaner. Where is the accountability on their part to be a better citizen to this area, a corporate citizen, and where is the enforcement? I don't see any of that, and the people who are paying the price are the citizens that live here. That's comment one. Comment two is, should we require these plants, it's a question or a comment, maybe I'll state it a different way. We should not allow these plants to use these ERCs indefinitely. If they need them to get their foot off the ground to get the plant running because we need the electricity, okay, I'm not a lover of that, but it accomplishes a purpose. But we should at least require them to use technology and spend money, not just produce a profit, but spend money in the use of technology to further reduce those emissions going forward, not just rely on the fact that they can purchase them from somewhere, and that would really make our environment better. It's a flawed model that we're working with right now. And my last comment has to do with the Environmental Rights Amendment. We, you, myself, as an elected official, are custodians of this environment. And it's our responsibility to look out for the citizens that we represent. And I don't believe by putting forth a plan like this and allowing them to do what they're doing with this 1,500 megawatt plant that is way oversized for this area, we're not being good custodians, and I believe we are violating the Environmental Protection Act. And we should all be held accountable for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Joe Piccoli?
No.
No? Okay. Ron Sebastianelli?
Yeah, I mailed mine into Russia. I get more answers from them, I think.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Ron Armazzani? Just say it your name, sir.
R-O-N, Armazzani, A-R-N-E-Z-Z-A-N.
Thank you.
I wonder how many people sleep.
Can you speak up, sir?
I'm here to try to protect the children of Jessup. That I'm going to be breathing this air for the next 40 years. And you people have no conscience. The DEP is strong enough to think about these children. Where's this world going? we are going to be afflicted with all kind of COPD, asthma, strokes, heart attacks because of this plant. Where is the conscience of this world? Are you people going to sleep tonight? If you can sleep tonight, I can't believe it. That's all I can say. Because I couldn't do what's going on here on this stage.
Thank you, sir. Carolyn Lizanti.
Thank you very much. My previous comments about how...
Carolyn, I'm sorry, I'm saying your name.
Okay, sure. It's CAROLYN-MIZANTY. My deep concern is about the health effects on our population and on the environment. And there are plenty of studies that you can pull up easily from the internet that talks about this, the relationship between gas-fired power plants and the local community. One of these studies is from the National Institute of Health, and it says that the association between residential proximity to fuel-fired power plants and hospitalization rates for respiratory diseases is increased. Their conclusion is that our results are consistent with the hypothesis that exposure to air pollution from fuel-fired power plants increases the hospitalization for respiratory diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, COPD, and other things like stroke and heart attacks. And that was my main issue from earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Petrosha.
Jason Petrosha, JASON, from Germany. I'm here tonight because I think, like a lot of people, this process seems a little bit absurd. These folks are able to come into our town, and as many have mentioned, run advertisements day after day in our paper that talk about improving our air quality, improving our environment, and we're still looking for ways that that's happening or how that could happen. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding that. I'm one of them. But the thought that they can pollute at such a level and then purchase energy credits from a facility 100 miles north of here that's been shut down for 18 years and claim that that's some environmental benefit is the whole process is absurd. One thing that Mr. Pennella mentioned was the idea of the Environmental Rights Amendment. And I think that's something that's important to consider in relation to here. Because the very notion of the reciprocity of New York seems to stand, and I would assert it does stand, in direct violation of Pennsylvania's Environmental Rights Amendment. In the last year, there's been a few major victories to strengthen the enforcement of that amendment, one of which involved the state leasing gas land and taking the proceeds from that and using it in the general fund. And that was not considered good stewardship, and it was considered a violation of the Environmental Rights Amendment. In this particular case, I think this is even worse, because what they're doing is they're polluting at such a level that they can't meet the permit standards, that they have to buy these credits. But what they're taking that money that they're spending for that credits and giving it to a private seller in New York State, and they're taking pollution out of New York State. That's not helpful Pennsylvania. You stated tonight that right now Pennsylvania is inundated. We're not, our Lackawanna County, I'm sorry, we're inundated. We're not exceeding. Well, then what's the likelihood of that continuing with a plant of this caliber operating is going to be? And then the concept of environmental justice was brought up before earlier, environmental justice areas. And I think that's going to be important moving forward in relation to this plan as well. They take the money to buy these credits, they're spending it in New York. We're in a school where, if you go across that hallway right there, there's a pool that's being closed. They came here because this is a depressed area. They were not challenged by anyone throughout the entire process. They made claims in the newspaper that they were going to make things better for us. And our schools are failing. And as long as we're going to allow that type of behavior in Pennsylvania, areas like Lackawanna County are going to continue to be exploited by people like this and companies like this. And
1 minute. Please stick to the emission reduction credits. Thank you.
well, I think this is all relative to the emission reduction credits. I'll just conclude by saying the notion that buying reduction credits from a facility that's not outpointed from us, 100 miles away, that's been closed for 18 years and emitting nothing, is somehow a benefit to anyone is absurd. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessup?
Jeff Smith, Jessup. I'd like to touch on the environmental justice aspect of this also. I believe that they have to be considered for the ERCs. I believe there is one area specifically, but that area includes Oliphant, Blakely, Peckville, Jessup. So one area might include multiple towns. When you look at the elderly, you look at the poor, and the lack of health insurance, you can see how emissions can affect these people. You can see how property value can affect these people. So when you're looking at environmental justice, it seems that it's been inadequate here. The ERCs, I think the permit should be denied, but I think it could be tweaked and then approved. I believe if we look and we can find ERCs that are within 35 miles of this facility, that would help alleviate some of the local pollution levels. At this point, it appears that Jessup is going to be the bearer of one of the largest natural gas power plants in the nation, with no benefit but the heavy particulate matter within 2 kilometers. Environmental justice mandates that the protection is given to the citizens. This program has not done that. And we need to look at retiring, using technology to benefit the community as we move forward. So I would hope that you can look at this plan, look at our environmental justice areas, look at where they're getting the ERCs, and tweak this so it would be more beneficial for the residents of Jessup and the surrounding communities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the person whose cell phone that is, please go out in the lobby way? Thank you. Alex Latorta? The same way.
Alex, A-L-E-X, Lotorto, L-O-T-O-R-T-O. I'm here on behalf of Clean Air Council. I live in Scranton. I want to echo a point I made in my initial question, that the section of PA Code 127.210, section A, in reference to, and I'm just regarding the common response document on page 6, that all ERCs would need to be purchased prior to commencing operation sources, is what you stated in response to this, Mr. Orchner. And if there was a scheduled operation for February, and you're going to be preparing a common response document, and just given the duration that it took you to respond in prior comment periods, I don't know that that would actually be within the law for them to start operating prior to the approval of the purchase of these ERCs. And I also, in another profession of mine, work as a state employee. I'm not here on behalf of that. I work in the welfare office in downtown Scranton, and I administer Medicaid applications. And in my interviews with clients, I hear a lot of things about respiratory issues in this area. We have low public health for many reasons. I think our working class culture, we smoke, we drink, we eat too much. You know, those are some things that happen, but to add to some of the children that I see, to add to their ambient air, these emissions, seems like a bad use of discretion by the DEP when you had a choice, and now you do still have a choice to use your discretion as a public servant to ask them to choose ERCs that are within a radius that would improve our air quality. I've said this before in public hearings, I've written it, I wrote it in the appeal of the National Air Program. The ERCs should be purchased at a local level. There are many polluting air sources, and I'll give you a few to suggest modification of the proposal. In the late 90s, there was a series of wasteful burning power plants. One of them was in Archville. That was a cogen facility that was built. There's throughout Hazleton. You go down 81, you see them left and right going down. Those facilities, they stop burning the coal, but they're still burning gas. They're less efficient than combined cycle power plants, and could be turned off. And you're putting on combined cycle and generating more megawatts of gas. And I'm not approval. I don't think any of the plants should be running. I think we should be using renewable energy, but that's one area where you could look to see where you can turn off sources with these ERCs locally. I'd also look at what efficiency standards could be raised in commercial boilers and steam plants in our area. I think that cleaning up downtown areas that utilize steam heat could be one way that small emission reduction credits could be utilized. If those buyers are interested in selling, or those sources are interested in selling their credits. I think that the other question, and then the point I wanted to make in regard to the comments of Invenergy, is that the Elizabeth Township plant in western Pennsylvania and the Fall River, Rhode Island plant are significantly smaller. And I'd be interested to see DEP's response to whether or not they could have chosen a smaller megawatt size and been under the NAC, the National Air Quality Standards, that would not have triggered the purchase of ERCs. And although it's job security for you to review them, right, they could have built a smaller plant. And I think it's a moment in history where the Lackawanna Valley has to choose. Which energy path we're going to go down. We supplied coal for the entire Northeast for many years. 30,000 miners and boys died underground. Their wives and daughters were sent to work in the mills. And I think this area has paid the price of impact of energy. And I think it's your decision now that makes a difference whether we're going to continue down that track. We have DEP programs in your building. Mine reclamation is paid for by current coal operators. I believe that new source of power, like Invenergy, should be paying for the cleanup of the past, and it should be local, and we should be treated like the environmental justice community. Not just because of our current socioeconomic standards, but because of what may happen in the future. And we should be raising our standard and moving lower.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who's here having a call? This is not for testimony. Not questions, testimony. Bill, go ahead.
Okay.
Just say it's going
My name is William Houston, H-U-S-T-O-N, and I'm from New York, but the last 6 months I've been living in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. And the first thing I want to say is I heard some, with regards to these ERCs, I heard some questions coming up about enforcement. And I'm just going to make a note that in New York, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, has a police force. There's DEC police. And I just find it very curious that the DEP in Pennsylvania doesn't seem to have, how do you do enforcement if you don't have a police force? And we have really important matters of, legal limits of pollutants, and we also have constitutional rights at play. So I would like to see, I don't know how, this is beyond the scope of what you guys are here for right now, but I'm just curious if there's no DEP police. I also want to comment on what I heard before about the computer models, and I know this is getting into the original plan approval, but I would argue that in Susquehanna County we have over 50 compressor stations. And I've been talking to you guys, Mr. Kempa and Mr. Wexman and Colleen, for a lot of years, 7 years at least, I've come into meetings in Susquehanna and Bradford County mostly, and the models don't work. We have incredible air pollution in Susquehanna County, and people have been asking you guys for years, what about cumulative impacts? People here are asking, what about cumulative impacts? And clearly, I mean, I can show you data from these spec monitors that are all over Susquehanna County showing that there's particulate matter coming from these compressor stations negatively impacting people's air that they breathe and their constitutional rights to clean air. So, you know, because there's no DEP, I'm going to just wrap it up with this. I want to say one thing first. So this thing about the New York emission control credits, this New York facility that's been closed for 20 years. So my understanding from what you said, sir, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, but that this was originally classified as an over-control and not a plant shutdown. So you guys, I think this market for these ERCs is controlled by the DEP. I'm pretty sure that's true, right? So are you guys going to let that stand because of a clerical error? I mean, it seems like that should be, somebody should pick that up and go, oh, this is a mistake. This isn't over control. This is a shutdown. This thing is no longer running. The shutdown, I think the time limit would have been 10 years, right? So we're past that. So I would say, and I would hope that some of the citizens here have some attorneys, because that sounds like that's something that could be litigated. And then I want to just wrap up this. So because there's no DEP police, once these permits get put into place, it's basically anything goes. I don't believe that there's sufficient checks to make sure that these operators are, you know, we have these regional monitors, but we don't have a lot of on-site, local, real-time monitoring of these compressor stations in Susquehanna County that I know of. And I'm sure the same thing applies in Lackawanna County. So what I want to say is, there's tremendous power placed in the hands of you guys. Once you permit this thing, it's done. There's not going to be ever any enforcement. I don't see enforcement actions. I don't see that the hard fist of the DEP slamming down on these. I see these negotiated fines, and I see these consent orders that are being signed all over the place. I'm asking you to really think very carefully about your jobs here, and also about this problem with cumulative impacts of large regions that are not adequately, in my opinion, being modeled by your model. And the case record in Susquehanna County is what's happened there should be the proof of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, anyone else? Sir? Just say anything about your name and come to my microphone, please.
James Moran.
Step a little closer. Just step a little closer.
How's that? James Moran. When I was a kid, I used to read a lot of books, comic books. And in the back of those comic books, there was always this little ads. You could call in, mail money in, and kind of believed a lot of different things. Probably still do. In a newspaper from May 20, 2015, the power plant puts in a ad. I don't know if you're Googling it, Mr. Blazer. It's over here. So basically what they said in the ad is, today, the air quality in Jessup is safe and healthy to breathe and will continue to be with the Lackawanna Energy Center, natural gas power plant. Jessup can breathe easy knowing this won't change when the plant is built. If you want to enter it into record, you guys can see it. I mean, I think Mr. Blazer's looking for it right on the internet right there. But when you put things like that out there, and I read this on the 20th of 2015, I thought, okay, there's going to be no hearing on the credits. It's not going to change the air. I'm wrong. Again. This is just the same as the back of the comic books. It's all garbage. We should put restrictions on them. Only so many miles away they can take credits for. there was a printing place right outside of Jessup. It was called Keystone Printing. It closed. Could that be part of their credits? Would their credits be there? Is there credits available in Jessup? Or is Invenergy, the Lackawanna Power, a company that stores them and has them in their back pockets? But if Mr. Blazer wants to see this, he can see it. Thank you.
If you can put it up there if you want to submit it on the public record. So.
Thank you.
No problem. Another person who would like to come on for testimony?
I don't know if he's looking for it.
5 minutes.
I'll give it to him. Mr. Blazer.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. All right. If we have no more questions, we're going to conclude this public hearing. Thank you for coming out tonight. It was a long drive, and thank you for sitting through the both sessions. Again, the public comment period for this particular plan approval application will end on Wednesday, February 14th, 2018. We'll accept comments at our Wilkes-Barre office up until 4 p.m. that day. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Good night. And if anyone wants to come up and give me their contact information, you can do that right now. Thank you.